Iran has been rattled after projectiles struck the premises of its Bushehr nuclear power plant in the middle of a raging regional war, raising urgent questions over the safety of its only operational reactor. With the Bushehr plant site hit, critics warn that the US and Israel are now dangerously flirting with the possibility of a nuclear disaster, even if this latest strike caused no immediate damage or radiation leak. Experts caution that if Iran's nuclear facilities are seriously damaged, it will not just be Iran that suffers. US Gulf allies clustered around the Arabian Gulf could also face fallout, contamination risks, and long-term environmental impacts. So what happens if Iran's Bushehr nuclear plant takes a direct hit in this war? Could it trigger a regional radiological crisis, force mass evacuations, and push already vulnerable Gulf states into an unprecedented emergency? Iran's Bushehr nuclear power plant complex has reportedly been struck by a projectile in the middle of the ongoing war, drawing global attention to the risks facing the country's only operational reactor. Iranian and international nuclear authorities say the incident caused no financial or technical damage to the facility, and there were no human casualties or signs of any radiation leak at the site. However, according to a report cited by Iran International on March 18, the exact source of the firing remained unclear, leaving open questions about who launched the projectile and why the plant's vicinity was targeted. In a post on social media platform X, the UN nuclear watchdog wrote, quote, "The IAEA has been informed by Iran that a projectile hit the premises of the Bushehr NPP on Tuesday evening. No damage to the plant or injuries to staff reported." Director General Rafael Grossi reiterates call for maximum restraint during the conflict to prevent risk of a nuclear accident, unquote. Notably, Russia, which supplies nuclear fuel for the Bushehr plant, had already withdrawn many of its staff and their families from the site as the war intensified, citing growing security concerns around the facility. Experts quoted by Al Jazeera warn that any deliberate or accidental strike on the Bushehr plant could trigger a major radiation crisis, with serious consequences spreading far beyond Iran's borders. Earlier, the IAEA cautioned that a direct hit on Bushehr would likely result in a very high release of radioactivity into the environment, making it one of the most dangerous possible targets in the entire region. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi has stressed that Bushehr holds thousands of kilograms of nuclear material, warning that any damage to its core systems could rapidly escalate into a full-blown nuclear emergency. In a worst-case scenario, Grossi says authorities could be forced to issue evacuation orders for areas extending several hundred kilometers from the plant, potentially displacing populations across multiple Gulf states. A former IAEA inspector said, quote, "It would be very dangerous if it were hit with a bomb or the cooling systems are interrupted. You might get an accident on the scale of Fukushima, where the reactor would melt down inside its building and maybe release small amounts of gas to the environment," unquote. Nuclear experts warn that a strike on the two main power lines supplying electricity to the Bushehr facility could cause its core reactor to melt, triggering a catastrophic failure of the plant's critical safety systems. Bushehr, located about 750 kilometers south of Tehran on Iran's Gulf Coast, is the country's only commercial nuclear power plant and a central pillar of its civilian energy program. A direct hit on the plant itself could lead to dangerous radiation leaks and widespread contamination risks, not only for Iran but also for neighboring Gulf nations downwind and along shared coastlines. Analysts caution that an attack on Bushehr could also contaminate a key source of desalinated drinking water drawn from the Gulf, threatening the primary water lifeline for millions of people. US allies Qatar and Bahrain are almost entirely dependent on desalinated water for their drinking supply, leaving them especially vulnerable if radiation were to spread through Gulf waters. The United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia are also heavily reliant on desalinated water to meet the needs of their major cities, meaning any long-term contamination could create a severe regional water security crisis. In June 2025, after more than a week of repeated Israeli air raids, the United States joined the campaign and bombed 3 major Iranian nuclear sites, dramatically escalating the confrontation over Tehran's nuclear program. At the time, Donald Trump boasted that these coordinated strikes had obliterated key nuclear facilities at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, portraying the operation as a decisive blow against Iran's nuclear infrastructure. However, subsequent checks by the UN nuclear watchdog and regional authorities found no increase in radiation levels outside the targeted sites, suggesting that while the facilities were heavily damaged, radioactive material did not leak into surrounding areas.